Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending what time you're tuning in. This is another Inside Whitehall podcast with me, Jonathan Gullis.
And me, James Starkey.
Well, James, we had Easter recess. During the week, we were pondering, what are we going to talk about? The war in Iran? Do we talk about returning of the Commons after recess? Do we talk about the local elections? But we've probably done that enough already. And then the day we choose to record, the mother of all gifts, 12 hours earlier, is then planted in our laps, which is The Guardian.
We did.
Labour supporting Guardian newspaper breaks a story that Peter Mandelson failed his security vetting that's undertaken by our security services when it came to being the ambassador to the United States of America, which sent number 10 into complete freefall for them to come out with a line that we're hearing this morning, which is the Prime Minister, the then Foreign Secretary David Lammy, the former Chief of Staff Morgan McSweeney. All these people were apparently not told by the Foreign Office that Peter Mandelson had failed security vetting, and therefore it is seen Ollie Robbins, the permanent secretary, has lost his job. He lost the confidence of Yvette Cooper, who's now the Foreign Secretary, and Keir Starmer. And the blame game is being squarely and solely laid at the door of the civil service. It is a story that I think many of us will find hard to believe that a political appointment is somehow not relayed back to the Prime Minister that they failed security vetting by our security services, someone who's going to have access to national security sensitive information, someone who we know has forwarded emails that certainly were commercially
But
sensitive
Jonathan,
to.
we should probably let people in on a private conversation we had definitely Tuesday and Wednesday as well,
Yes.
which is us saying, "Oh, there's not much going on domestically. It's all quite quiet." I think I said to you, I'd noticed on the morning broadcast round, Labour was sending out fairly junior ministers, trying to keep away from any big news. Like I think their basic approach was, they've got Starmer's kind of dealing with the Middle East thing. We can talk about their position on that and how that works. And then we had this row midweek about the defence budget, which was kicked off by someone Starmer himself appointed, a man called Lord Robertson, who was Defence Secretary under the last Labour government back in the late noughties. And Keir Starmer had commissioned him and two others to do a strategic defence review, and he criticised pretty directly the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, I think in particular. And that was kind of the big story Wednesday and what Kemi led on. But me and you were talking through this time saying, well, that's interesting. We can have a discussion about defence spending and where does the Tories and Reform sit on that. But there wasn't much going on domestically until kind of late yesterday when it
3
just
p.m. yesterday.
exploded. And I think, and again, these are conversations me and you have had over the past couple of weeks. There's a constant chatter around Westminster, and one of the things, tell me if I'm wrong, people will say to you is, oh, Starmer's probably safe now, and he'll probably last till the end of the year, and I would agree with that. I think you do too.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
think
I
both
do.
of us say, yeah, but we lived through Boris and Pincher, and you could never have predicted Pincher. It was an, I don't think anyone saw that on the horizon. And even in the hour that it dropped, thought that within a week Boris would go from that. And I think the Mandelson saga or scandal, however you want to describe it, it does have the potential, I think, to deliver things like this. I thought it would be when we got the next tranche of documents.
Yeah.
And if we give a dry explanation, as factual as we can, of what happened yesterday, which is what we're led to believe. I want to try and give a kind of as a factual one as possible. And I'm sure
Yeah, yeah.
both, both of us can,
Let's take the Prime Minister at his word. Let's
let's.
lay out the
That's a good
story.
way. Let's maybe describe a number 10 view. So if we're to believe number 10, the story is that when they were appointing Peter Mandelson, he went through a vetting process. The vetting process for an appointment is conducted by the sponsoring, we'll call it department, the department who is in charge of that. Under the law, and this is, I'll be honest, this is stuff I've taken from tweets today, but there's been a lot of civil servants kind of explaining very factual issues. Very specifically, the Foreign Secretary legally appoints an ambassador in the name of His Majesty the King, in the name of the head of state. And while number 10 and the Prime Minister can have an influence of that, it is nonetheless the Foreign Secretary's duty to directly make those appointments. As part of that appointment process, individuals, in this case ambassadors, will be vetted. And the vetting is separate from the decision to appoint. It is run by the civil service without political interference. And none of the findings in that, so they might say, it could be the case in a vetting process, this is an area for concern, but, you know, we're flagging this without saying it, they shouldn't receive vetting. Those kinds of things cannot, we believe, be revealed to the politicians. And so in this case, it would have been at the time David Lammy and any junior ministers in the Foreign Office involved. But the final decision is taken by the Permanent Secretary whether to grant this. And I think there's a lot of kind of smoke about this process. About there's some discrepancy about the decision, who decides that they're cleared vetting, and that kind of stuff. And we're getting some of that this morning from anonymous, and I think a civil servant who's going to perhaps go on record as well. And we are led to believe, again by number 10 and the government, that in the past few months since the Mandelson saga blew up, number 10 have been seeking answers to specific questions, and that Tuesday this week. So I think one important point to make is that it's before the Prime Minister stood in front of parliamentarians at his weekly, while Parliament sitting, Prime Minister's Question Time. They found out that Peter Mandelson had, quote unquote, failed his vetting. We didn't find out then. We found out because of a great bit of journalism by The Guardian, Pippa, and I think a couple of other people on the byline. I don't have their names now, but Pippa Quira was one of the journalists, that this had happened, that Peter Mandelson had in fact failed his. It's called. There's different levels of vetting. I'm not sure we could do that in another podcast if we get into it, but this it's called developed vetting, and strap is the most significant material you can go up to. Most SPADs, in my knowledge, will receive a basic kind of what they call a security clearance, which is quite straightforward and quite quick, and involves basic DBS check. Do you have a criminal record? And some background checks. And developed vetting is a lot more serious. Often takes weeks, if not sometimes months. And you have to have this to see certain material. So sensitive security material. And so I guess I don't know your experience of it, but I will give a quick explainer of my experience of it in government. So at DEFRA, it wasn't. I don't know if I wasn't definitely cleared on developed vetting. I had basic security clearance. When I went to the Home Office, obviously the Home Office is a department that's responsible for significant areas of national security. The Home Secretary obviously has to sit in meetings with the head of certainly MI5, NCA, parts of the police that deal with very sensitive security issues, and do things, again, probably for another pod, but sign warrants for things that the security services want to carry out. That needs approval. And so often you'll have at least one special advisor who would have that level of clearance, developed vetting or strap clearance. We had an advisor who had worked at number 10 and therefore already had obtained that clearance. And so the approach we took at the time was it was easier than having someone new, me or someone else, go through that. We had someone who could sit with the Home Secretary on relevant meetings who was there, who was already cleared. And so that meant I couldn't sit in certain meetings because I was not cleared. So there were things that there were documents I couldn't see, and there were meetings I couldn't go to because I was not cleared to do so. And that other individual was able to do that. We could have put forward more people, but it's a matter of resource. And so it's important to remember it's a really important thing. It's something that in government, if you don't have that clearance, you really can't. You shouldn't be looking at certain documents. You shouldn't be in certain meetings. So it's taken very seriously by Whitehall as a whole, and so that leads us to the point on Thursday when. So we're now led to believe that the Prime Minister knew about it, but for some reason we've not really had an explanation of when he's going to tell us. Where we are right now, I think, and jump in if I'm wrong, is we've had a short clip from the Prime Minister saying he's very angry, which he seems to be angry a lot about things that he doesn't know about, and we're told that he will speak to Parliament when he'll set out what happened on Monday. But late last night, the bombshell dropped that Ollie Robbins, Sir Ollie Robbins, a very experienced civil servant, someone who I dealt with during Brexit, always found to be a kind of a straight-dealing guy in that sense. He was fired. He was sacked by the Prime Minister, and the blame's, I think, out.
Having been hired, James, by the Prime Minister.
He's kind of
Having
basically been hired, certainly been hired, appointed since the Prime Minister's been in place. And I think where we are now is, which I think is pretty factual, the political element of government, the Prime Minister and his team, special advisors, political appointees, they are laying the blame totally and squarely at the civil service, specifically Ollie Robbins, and Ollie Robbins has lost his job. We haven't heard anything from Ollie. We're starting to hear from friends of Ollie, but we haven't really heard anything from Ollie. And so I think at the moment he's had no chance at all to put his side of things / defend himself. We haven't heard a full account direct from the Prime Minister, and we will look to hear that Monday. I suspect more things are going to come out by Monday. That's a long time in politics, I would say. And so that's where I think, have I missed, I don't know, you tell me, have I missed
No.
on
I
a
think
factual level?
I think on the factual level, you're bang on the money, and I think that what we've now seen are questions about how on earth is it that a political appointee. So if I go through the questions, number one, how on earth is a political appointee, someone who has been, as I say, directly chosen by the Prime Minister, how, if they fail security vetting for one of the most serious government roles, especially our ally, the United States of America, how is that not relayed to the Prime Minister or the Foreign Secretary? That is baffling. And as we say, we're led to believe that there is a process where the government political people aren't told that. Darren Jones has come out and said that's now been suspended, and there's now an urgent audit going on to see if and when that has been used since certainly Labour came into power. I'm sure they'll go back further to when the Conservatives were in power as well. So that's one thing we've got to get our heads around. How on earth can something that serious happen and that not be told to the Prime Minister who's chosen to appoint this person? The second question is, when did the Prime Minister actually know? David Maddox has done something quite extraordinary. He's the political editor of The Independent. He has shared a screenshot of a message he sent in September 2025 to someone in Downing Street who was a special advisor to the Prime Minister, saying, I'm being told that there are red flags were raised during the security vetting, and he says, is it related to China rather than with Epstein?
Mm.
And the response he's got, which he shared, is that no FCDO procedure, that's Foreign Commonwealth Development Office for those who don't know, FCDO procedure has been followed. So again, we've got people saying that something was flagged to number 10. How on earth
Well,
has someone
let
not
me
gone
jump in on that
and
one.
probed that?
So again, having been a media special advisor, I tweeted earlier. I think it's just important to. I think one of the things that's going to come out, and the Prime Minister will be questioned on by Kemi and others who stand up in Parliament on Monday, is so if we look at the story from the PM's perspective, they've said that unilaterally, and that is the way it should be done by process. Let's clarify that. So far as we understand, what number 10 want to claim is process was followed, something we hear a lot from Keir Starmer. This dry idea that process was followed. That the permanent secretary got this information from MI6, whoever did the vetting. I think it's mentioned MI6, and cleared Peter Mandelson nonetheless. So factually, what's also true is Peter Mandelson was announced as ambassador in December.
Yep.
He became
Before
ambassador
vetting.
in February, officially. And this vetting that we're talking about, and the decision that was made allegedly by the FCDO without Number Ten's knowledge or the Foreign Secretary's knowledge was in January. So that's that's the sequence of events. On the point of David Maddox, the political editor of The Independent, who asked this question, and it does seem I've spoken to a few journalists late last night, and I think there had been questions by very senior Westminster journalists to Number 10 along these lines by other journalists as well. When you get a question like, if I'm the special advisor and I'm in Number 10 and Maddox texts me and says, this is what I've been told, I definitely don't just text him and say, yes, this process was followed. Unless I've had that conversation or exchange of emails previously on that issue, I go as a political advisor, probably either through you have a private secretary as a special advisor, either through my private secretary or probably straight to the press team at Number 10 or via Number 10 to FCDO's press team and say, I've got this inquiry. What is the answer to this question? I'm being asked this specific question. And they come back and say to me, the line that was used to Maddox, they give me that line and I give that to the journalist. Or they say to me, actually he might be onto something here. And I might try and avoid confirming his story, but I don't lie. I say it was more complex than that or something else. So it's interesting to me because we're lapping up at different people's doors about who knew what and what question. And I think one of the things, if Number 10's story is anywhere near true, what we'll pivot to is what questions were asked, and therefore who then lied to people. Because you tell me, you've been an MP and a minister, Jonathan. Mandelson goes in disgrace. One of the issues is the appointment process. How has no one in the past few months said to the FCDO, oh, what was his vetting? Also, Parliament has voted to see these documents. So who's been going through the documents?
And as you say, James, that vote took place also a number of months ago as well. I mean, let's be clear.
Months exactly.
Mandelson is sacked in what? I think Mandelson sacked in, I think I remember correctly, the September of 2025. So we are getting close to 8 months down the line here. So as you say, I cannot get my head round when the whole thing is about the process that was followed and the information that was known to the Prime Minister and to 10 Downing Street, how no one's decided to forensically, and Keir Starmer, I'm told, is Mr. Forensic. I certainly heard that when I was in Parliament, he was leading the opposition. How no one's thought, let's go step by step through every part of the process and let's know what was said, what he said, and what others then said in response to that, including things like the security vetting. Bearing in mind that you've got someone who would have been questioned about the security vetting, bearing in mind he's been sacked from government twice or resigned and then sacked twice before. This is not a guy who's been a squeaky clean history. So you've got this issue there alone. And I think I just find it baffling. I think the idea that something has gone across the desk of the Prime Minister yet again. Oh, sorry, not gone across the desk. I think Harry Cole's now joking about the fact, what's the point of the Prime Minister having a desk because nothing seems to go through it. I thought Sam Coates in his Paul clip today did an excellent job of saying to the Prime Minister, why is it every time we have these, it feels like you're a passenger and not the driver of this government? Because every time there's a scandal, oh, there's something he didn't see. Which doesn't help him when there's a whopping great piece by Tim Shipman in The Spectator, which was superbly written. It says the Prime Minister naturally clocks off on a Friday and doesn't check back in apparently till a Monday, is not naturally inquisitive, is not naturally probing or prodding things, does not naturally come with his own suggestions or questions, to me sounds quite frankly lazy and happy to let others just run the show and then just checks in as and when he needs to. Or normally his political team checks in and tells him what's going on. I mean, I think you said it to me last night, James. Either Sir Keir Starmer is a liar or he is deeply incompetent. Either way, he's not fit to be Prime Minister on either of those two standards, in my view. And I think that is the view of the public. And you put a tweet out there saying, before this scandal hit, let's look at the last word cloud by, I think Savanta Comrades did a word cloud of how people describe Sir Keir Starmer. And what was the massive word in the middle of that word cloud? Liar. That was the impression of him before this all kicked off. This row started again. And I just, politically, they can spin it all they want. They can talk about process all they want. I think no one I speak to, and I've been out speaking with people even this morning, knocking on doors and meeting with businesses, have said to me, no business would at any stage not have asked questions about the process. No one really believes the Prime Minister doesn't get told that someone's failed security vetting by MI6.
Mm.
No one, people find that hard to fathom. And as much as that may be true, people are going to wonder why the Prime Minister didn't even bother to just check once the whole
But on
scandal kicked
this,
off.
I mean, this. I think it is hard to predict where scandals go. I think Monday is going to be fascinating, and I'm sure,
Speech of his life, by the way, James. This is probably the biggest speech he'll give in Parliament.
yeah, but it's the answers. So I'm going to read out
Yes.
something I know you've looked at. We both looked at it. So there was a point at which I think this is a letter that went to Parliament to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. I think, and
Signed by James. Signed by Ollie.
and
Isn't it Vet Cooper
yes,
and Ollie Robbins signed this?
so it's signed by Ollie Robbins, who the Prime Minister's laying the blame at the door, and the politically appointed Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, Vet Cooper. And in the letter, verbatim, it says, the departments involved in national security vetting are required to process all personal data in accordance with the UK Data Protection Data Protection Act. The process is also independent of ministers who are not informed of any findings other than the final outcome. This remained the case in this instance. Now, I think we're going to get, knowing Keir Starmer as we have come to know him, one of the things that I think will be interesting is that he's going to try and define final outcome, because he's going to claim the final outcome was the decision that Ollie Robbins told him, which was it's okay to appoint him. Well, there's a problem with that because he'd already appointed him. He'd appointed him in
Yes.
December. So
Yes.
in terms of the vetting took place after he was appointed, right? So that's one problem. That doesn't, as far as I understand, normally happen with ambassadors. It's quite rare we have these essentially politically appointed ambassadors.
And goes against James what Keir Starmer said relentlessly in the House of Commons and in the media. Full due process was followed. Well, you
And
can't have full due process if you've appointed someone before the process has
well,
completed.
there's some other context there in that Keir removed a lady called Karen Pierce, who was very well respected within the civil service and respected in Washington. And we're told by people who know Washington had a pretty solid relationship with kind of Team Trump. And they took this risk to remove this well-established civil servant, who I think Karen was at the UN before, lot of experience internationally, and as was kind of bedded in the kind of Trump Washington, so far as we know. They decided to remove her for Mandelson before the vetting. And so this thing on final, I think we're going to get a lot of stuff on Monday where you're going to get this very loyally from Starmer argument around what was final decision and what questions were asked. And the problem is, I think the public are just going to call BS. I think the public are going to say, they're going to say what you just said, Jonathan. They're going to say, well, you fired this guy in I just double checked, September the 11th he left his job, Peter Mandelson. You fired this guy, right? Are you expecting us to believe you never asked about this security clearance?
Since then,
And
at
you're
least
arguing
since
about
then.
what is a final decision? We don't believe you. No one's going to believe this. And this kind of riddle around process, it's not going to play for them. People are just fundamentally not going to believe it. And if they do in any way believe it, they'll think he's incompetent.
The irony is, James, as well, the language I've heard today from Darren Jones about, oh, this is a failure
I
of
missed
the
that.
state.
Tell me the gist
So,
of the Darren Jones. I
so,
know he was
so
doing a
Darren
reading this
Jones
morning.
so Darren Jones was laying out the arguments you made about the FCDO process, but then he was saying this is a failure of the state. And actually, he was said, you're sounding quite Liz Trussy there. You're sounding quite MAGA. You're saying there is a deep state, and they which you work against. I mean, I think Kate Garraway or Good Morning Britain also said, one of the other problems that they've got with this is we're being told that our elected politicians don't actually run anything.
Mm.
Is that what now the government's line is? Because, by the way, these are the people who pillared people on the right of British politics for suggesting that the Quangos and the civil service are basically circumventing ministers, circumventing parliament, and doing what they want to do. Ironically, now we've got this Labour government literally using those lines, which has actually been, I think, bubbling away for quite a while. If you think about people who have left government, who have been writing pieces, former special advisors writing pieces saying, "Oh, the state is too bureaucratic, it's too slow, doesn't react quickly, blah blah." I mean, I just found that quite fascinating that
You,
even the
you tell
journalists are now
me,
going,
you've joined Reform, and I think it's fair to say a lot of the reason that people are turning to Reform is because they're really fed up of the state not working and politicians blaming other people. It's a big
yeah,
tell me, central reason why people want to vote for Reform or are looking at Reform at the moment.
they want to smash the system apart. They feel the system's broken. They want to
I think
break
standing
it. They
up
want to break
and
it.
saying, I can't, I'm the Prime Minister, but I can't really get the system to work. You know, what do you think people are going to say to that? People are going to say,
Imagine a head
you
teacher,
shouldn't be
James,
Prime
in a
Minister
school.
then. You shouldn't be Prime Minister.
Imagine a head teacher standing up in a school going, "I can't get the kids to behave."
Yeah,
Like you'd be like, "Well, what are you doing in the job?"
yeah. I mean, this
You know,
constant. They seem oblivious to the fact that they are actors and not commentators. They still, what you described from Darren Jones and some of the stuff we've heard in the last 24 hours. It's
by the
just
way,
that
James, he was very cross as well. He was also very cross and deeply concerned. He shared the same anger as the British people.
they seem to think anger is in place of competence. The public don't want anger; they want competence. They don't want you to be angry that successive decisions you don't know about, you haven't been told about, you don't know how to get the system to work. They want you to make it work. Like we're angry, it's the public that you want anger. Go and speak to the public, mate. Your job is to fix all this, and to what you touched on. This was a permanent secretary that you essentially appointed, running the rule over someone who you'd already appointed without getting them to do the vetting in the first place. You'd appointed Mandelson anyway.
With the foreign secretary that you also had appointed.
With the foreign secretary you had appointed, with a cabinet, I don't know what, are we on third cabinet secretary now? With
The cabinet secretary was also his appointment.
hard to
Yeah,
remember who was the cabinet secretary at the time, and I doubt they can remember who was the comms director at the time. I don't think they've even got a comms director at the moment. But these are all people you appointed. At some point, do you not look in the mirror and say, "Hey, maybe you're the problem here"? Like if you keep appointing all these people who keep not doing very well, the common denominator is not those individuals. They've left. They've gone.
what was it, James, as well? I think there's a great video clip of Keir Starmer first of all saying it's don't blame officials. In fact, he said it. He basically had a go at Boris Johnson in the House for saying, "How dare you blame officials? This is like you won't take the ownership of it." He also said that in I think subsequent like the sort of leadership elections. I mean, my favourite thing I've got to say is I've seen Tom Watson, former bigwig in Labour, former deputy leader of the Labour Party, go out and say there's many things you can say about Keir Starmer. He's not a liar. Well, I did reply actually. I've actually out ratioed for the first time ever. Normally I get polled on, so I've achieved something. Even lefties are going. It's hurting me to agree with Gullis on X today. But I said, well, here's Keir Starmer's leadership pledges. He literally lied to his Labour leaders, his Labour members, in order to become leader. So why are we shocked that he somehow lied to the country? And then Adam Bolton gave me the best laugh yesterday when there was a video clip of Keir Starmer at a press conference who says at the press conference, so he is safe because he wasn't in the House of Commons, oh, all due process was followed specifically, he says, with the security vetting. He cleared security vetting. And Adam Bolton then tweeting, oh, yeah, but, he didn't say that in Parliament, so it's fine. Oh, good. It's good to lie in a press conference as
I
long as
mean,
it's not in Parliament.
if that's the Labour defence over the next couple of weeks, well, we did lie, but just to the public and not to parliamentarians. I mean, God help them, is what I'll say.
I just honestly, like, I've seen like some Labour MPs going out. What was it? I saw Joe White do an interview with Times Radio today going, oh, look, like, Keir's going to come to the House on Monday and he's going to set the record
But
straight. And
I heard
everyone's,
Joe White. I mean, I don't know where she exactly sits with Starmer, but I didn't think it was the biggest vote of approval because when
no,
they
it
said,
wasn't.
should he resign, she said, well, let's kind of see what he's got to say.
Well, James, on that, Sam Coates, that was the first question Sam Coates in the poll clip used today. Are you considering your position? And it's been pointed out by Christopher Hope, I saw on GB News, that Keir Starmer didn't say yes or no to that. He went straight into his pre-rehearsed statement. He didn't actually say, no, I'm not considering my position. So Chris Hope's like, well, does that mean this is on the cards? Like, what's going on here? Like, the fact he's not ruled it out, that classic thing in Westminster that we love so much. It's not, could you rule out, or could you rule in?
Mm.
I think this is what's going on. I mean, I saw a great tweet as well. What was it? We should put Keir Starmer's desk in the English Channel and stop small boats going across it. I mean, this is, it's just become ridicule. I'm
Mm.
laughing because it's so ludicrous that we're in this situation. And by the way, let's be frank, let's talk about the politics of this all, James, as well. This story for number 10 could not have come at a worse time. They are at the moment projected to only retain 13% of the seats across England in councils that they currently have. This story landed on the day and before people got home that Royal Mail were hand posting postal votes through doors. They're arriving yesterday and they're arriving today. And this story, as you know and I know, because the PM's not saying anything until Monday, is going to drag on all the way
So tell
through the
it.
weekend.
Why is that? Why does that matter?
Because as people are sitting down with their postal ballot, and most people in cases, if it lands on a Friday, like mine in my community are, they probably send them back in the post on Monday. They may go at the weekend, but realistically, they'll fill it in over the weekend and put it in
So
the car
people
with
that are
them and
doing
on
it usually send it off relatively speedily within a few days.
relatively speedily. And so at a time when they're thinking about who to vote for, and I think, look, it's fair
And
to
give us
say
an
that.
idea of what percentage of a council vote or devolved vote might be postal votes.
So I think in councils, I estimated about 50 to 60% of all votes cast are purely from postals in my area,
You're
based on
joking.
last data I saw.
Half
No,
of votes
50%.
are postal.
Yeah, so for half of the votes will be postals alone,
I did
which
not know
obviously
that.
means the election could be determined. Like these people in local council elections tend to actually probably determine,
Mm,
or as you saw with my own election, James, I was actually neck and neck with Labour on postal vote, and then I just got absolutely swarmed in the general
mm.
election by Reform, who just dominated the actual polling day. So the key for everyone is always get a good lead in your postal vote. And then what you hope is that if Labour and Tory, for example, in my area have a better on the ground operation, that we've built up a significant enough lead that we can weather some of that storm. Or indeed, we can then pile on top because,
And
I'd like to think
tell me this. So across the country, well, across not just England, I assume it will. I think I spoke to an SNP person. I think will be the same in Wales and Scotland for the devolved elections. Across the country, these postal votes will come to people's doors. You're saying up to half of the final votes cast will be from these votes.
certainly in
How
council elections in England. Certainly in council elections in
you've done a
England.
lot of elections. Does this matter? Will this affect people's votes?
I think for anyone, I think if you're Labour, certainly in Wales and Scotland, and maybe in some areas where it's just you and Reform in a straight shootout, maybe in some parts of Greater Manchester or like with Wigan, for example. I think there's a lot of reason to be down on Labour already, and I think for anyone who is thinking, what do you do? I think you'll either make a lot of Labour voters think, I just can't be bothered to vote, and they won't send their ballot in, or they'll spoil their ballot because obviously they don't want to vote necessarily for Reform or Greens. So maybe that will harm them. I think it's worse for Labour with the Green Party because now if you're kind of flip-flopping and thinking, you know what, like Keir Starmer's destroying progressive politics, the only way I'm going to send a signal to these Labour lot to get rid of this guy as soon as possible is I'm going to have to get the vote green. I think it's more dangerous for Labour on their left flank than it is on their right flank. I think if you're someone who's Labour thinking about voting Reform, I suspect you've already made your mind up. This just reaffirms what you already think about Keir Starmer and Labour. I think if you're someone who's thinking, I'm tempted by the Greens, but maybe I want to stop Reform, but now you're thinking, you know what, this just cannot carry on.
Mm.
This just cannot carry on. And maybe you just go, it's my local council election. It's the only way I can send a signal. It's not a general election. I'm not electing the Prime Minister. I'm electing my local councillor. I can live with the consequence of that vote. I'm going to vote Green and tell Keir Starmer where to go. And I think that is where the real risk is for Labour. So if you're in London and you're Labour, this will be a huge concern right now. I even think in my own neck of the woods up here, we've got 21 Greens out of 44 potential candidates running. That is, I think, three, four times the size the Greens have ever run historically in my local area. I mean, I thought Labour would come back between three and five councillors in Newcastle under Lyme. I can now see a case where the Greens stop that. I can see the Greens winning and Labour coming back with zero
Wow.
from currently 15 to zero in my neck of the woods. An area that all three parliamentarians who cover that borough are Labour, and they could go down to zero.
So,
councillors.
so the knock-on effect to this could be even worse local elections than Labour thought, devolved elections than they thought. What? Tell me this. As so, Labour have got their MPs. They're going to be out. I've met a couple of MPs this week. Met someone for
They're out
breakfast.
door knocking right now, mate.
I've spoken to you this week. You're out. At the moment, over the next, I think this week was the real start of the full election, the local elections campaign. Forget the kind of legal kick-off date and the ballots going out. It really felt like the national leaders were much more starting to say, oh, I'm here.
Kemi's not in Westminster, right?
Yeah,
Kemi's on the road. Nigel's on the road. Ed
Nigel's on
Davies
the
on the
road.
road.
There's big focus on that. So that's now going on. Uh, if you're an MP, you're a Labour MP. I'm guessing you're going to knock on doors this weekend, next week. You're probably going to hear some of this. Then you're going to go into and if you've got elections in your area, be that England, Scotland, Wales, you're going to see the data come back,
Yeah.
and it's going to be bad for Labour. What does that? You've experienced that as a Conservative MP when we had poor sets of local results towards the end. What does that do to your frame of mind? Do you talk to other MPs about your thoughts? How does it? What do you? I guess the big question people will ask is, does this put Starmer's position in peril post the locals? And
I
that is
think it does.
down to fundamentally what everyone says. Labour, the only people that can decide Starmer's position or will do
Our Labour MPs, yeah.
are Labour MPs and very specifically the cabinet. When the herd moves, as Boris once said, if the Labour MPs move one way or another, he'll probably go. So, tell us what's the line.
Absolutely. MPs are chatting. They're normally at this stage chatting with mates, people they can trust to have those kind of frank conversations with on WhatsApp or on phone, and not fear that maybe the chief whip will get get a hold of it. Um, if you've got anyone operating, so let's suggest that where Streeting has an operation. I mean, we can suggest that because in Playbook it got announced that someone called up a speechwriter in 10 Downing Street asking
But
them to join Team
operation,
Wes.
what we would mean is we'd meet some MPs that are mates with him who may not currently have a formal role, but they would be coordinating, speaking to other Labour MPs, and going back to their own kind of shadow
Into a
whipping
spreadsheet, entering into
operation
a spreadsheet where
and
people are.
saying this person's unhappy, that person's going to stick by the Prime Minister come what may. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So those people also probably doing call arounds and just trying to play friendly and starting to gather intel of
You've
what's
had
going on.
those
I'm sure
calls.
I've had those calls.
What?
I've had those
Give us
calls.
someone. What do you
Well, to
know?
be honest with
Do you know
you,
what's going
they're
on
your
that
mates.
happens?
To be honest with you, your mates. So what happens is you normally get in the room and then you discuss amongst yourselves, like, oh, you go through the list of MPs and people MPs volunteer. So let's say there's four people close to Wes as
No,
a
but
suggestion. I'm
when
not.
you've had the call,
No, no. I'm just going
do
to
you
give you an
know?
example.
Okay.
I'm going to give you an example. So, as an example, let's pretend there's four MPs close to Wes. They'll go through a list of MPs. Those four will then say, I know that person well, and then everyone divvies up. The call comes in, and then the first time you get a call, like at first you just think because it's normally your mates, you're just like, oh yeah, you're
Mm,
chatting. It's when you get like the second call, like within 2, 3 weeks, to have the same
okay.
conversation. You're like, this is like
Yeah.
you're really interested in what's happening in Newcastle under Lyme,
Yeah.
or Stoke-on-Trent. That's when you start to go, oh, okay, I think I know what's going on here. And obviously, most people quite quickly in Westminster, I think you know, James, figure out if someone. There's always the rumor that so and so's already on so and so's team or
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I think you're automatically suspicious of those people. The difficulty is trying to find people who no one thinks is on a team
Yeah.
and trying to make the call. I mean, there's obviously the groups, there's little factions within every party that have their little WhatsApp groups. There's always one in that camp screenshotting away or making notes of what's people saying, or you see someone who looks a bit upset and you go to, let's say they're nearby where Wes is, you might go, oh, Wes, you should just give them a call and just see how they are and just check in and stuff like that. So you're feeding that intel in all the time. Yeah, so I've been on the receiving end and I've been involved in it. So I've done it two ways, James. I've been an instigator and a receiver.
And so, if you
Uh,
if you've been an instigator, do you get much? Do you find out much information?
Nothing more than you already think. It's very rare. I mean, the problem is the moment you start saying I always went for a tread lightly approach of just trying to gain just general mood and ask general questions. I think some people make the mistake of going, oh, well, if we change to so and so, what do you think of that? Then you might as well just say, hi, I'm on Team X and I'm calling
Mm.
to ask you that. So I used to just go, oh, how's it feeling on the ground? What's the data showing? what's your view on what happens after May? Maybe they're like, what do you think we need to do? What do you think we need to do? Make it sound like we're in it together. What do you
Yeah.
think we need to do? And then they just leave it at that. Basic questions. Normally on the phone call. I think the phone call's a giveaway a bit. I think in Westminster people are so used to WhatsApping. I think the moment you start calling, people are like, hmm.
Mm.
I think a phone call is like, I remember someone calling me and I was like, I know we chat on WhatsApp a lot, but I can't remember the last time you called me. I can't
Yeah.
remember the last time you just called. And that, obviously, we all know that means you don't want this in writing. You
Mm.
want plausible deniability. So I think that the best people regularly text and call. So when they do call, it doesn't seem weird that they're calling, but
Mm.
you've got to be like really on it. I would suggest a Gavin Williamson level, probably like, sort of 4D chess,
Yeah.
to be able to pull that kind of move off. So yeah, no, I think that's what. Look, there'll be so Labour MPs right now will be chatting to their activists and members, and I know what happens because I was there. I remember when the D-Day story broke, and we'd been out canvassing, and we just got back, and we saw the story breaking, and we thought, okay, this could be a problem. Let's see. And it was the next day. I remember like waking up the next day, and the story had really blown up about Rishi obviously having come back for a Paul Brand
Mm.
interview. And I myself just felt so demoralised. I remember texting everyone in my team that day, just going like, "We're not campaigning today. Have the day off." Because
So
I was just like, I can't face it. I needed 24 hours just to feel it, angry, but not be on a door where a Ring doorbell camera might pick me up and saying something that could end up in the national media. I needed to be able to call you, speak to my wife, and have a good old rant
so
for the
so
day.
on a Saturday, people will be out canvassing,
Yes.
and so you would think this is like, I mean, I don't know exactly where it is for the public. I think it's top of most BBC, ITV news bulletins. So tomorrow, the public are going to have their own view of what's gone on. My wild guess is it won't be hugely favourable towards the Labour and the Prime Minister.
No.
So tomorrow, you're going to get this. These MPs are going to be out in their area, out with their local activists, knocking on doors, and you have a feel for the people that are on your side and not on your side, right? You're kind of, I've knocked on doors. I can tell you if someone's definitely a Labour voter trying to waste my time or just wants to have a go at me. It's fine. Or they're a conservative or conservative leaning, but they're angry, and they might not vote for you. They might vote for you, but they're kind of basically they should be someone you should be able to you
Yeah.
want to get to vote for you realistically, but you can kind of tell that, right? You know that. So if
I think
those
the
people
most
are
worrying thing
angry,
will.
that's when your warning signs go off. I guess what
So
I'm saying.
look, as I've always said before, sometimes I was told by more experienced parliamentarians, you want people to be angry because actually anger is better than apathy, which I kind of get, but I think overall I kind of get that because John Redwood was the one who gave me that information, but because he goes, then they feel sorry for you. But I think the problem is the anger is in a place I can't recall in a very long time in British politics.
Mm.
I mean, Keir Starmer, I mean, I can tell you now, when people say they're undecided, I always ask a question because obviously you're probing for as much information as you can. Well, is there anyone you would not vote for?
Yeah.
And more often than not, Labour.
Okay.
Labour. So now I'm like, okay, I've got a shot with you. So I mark you down as what I call a probable reformer
Mm.
rather than just undecided, which means they could go anyway or just not vote at all.
Mm.
And so you're probing all the time. That's coming up so regularly, my jaw hits the floor. And then the other element I think with the anger
And these
is
are
you'll
people,
just come.
sorry, you think have voted Labour before?
These are just no, this is just the public. So they may have voted Labour, but they're just not even entertaining it.
Okay.
What I'm most struck by at the moment is when I knock on doors and people who people who see I'm from Reform, you either get loads of love,
Yeah.
you get the door very quickly closed on you and told no, absolutely not. You either get then I'm undecided, or you're getting no, I won't. And then you get, but they don't close the door on you; they leave it open. So then you go, oh, is it voting Labour this time? And they have gone to me. I would normally vote Labour, but if there's green on the ballot, I'll vote green.
Mm.
So these people who have never voted Tory, they've never voted Reform, they normally are lifelong Labour in my neck of the woods, and I've never canvassed so many Green voters in my life.
Mm.
The fact I've even got two Green candidates on the ballot paper running against me in Kidsgrove has never happened in the history of the seat. I mean, they managed to find two of the three candidates. I've even got a trade unionist and socialist coalition candidate running.
So
I mean, it's just
today, the happiest person today is probably Zach Balansky.
Zach Plansky. If I was Zach Plansky, this is great. Actually, the Plaid Cymru, the SNP,
Yeah.
and the Greens, they're the three I think
Well,
biggest winners
yes,
of all
I
this.
think the S&P person I spoke to was
I think you and I both know that person. They are
Yeah.
they were. I think they felt it couldn't have been a better day for them yesterday, could it? It couldn't have been a better day.
Yes, I think they probably thought it was unhelpful.
It's just so I think we're in this crazy situation now where I think look, you and I have constantly flip-flopped on this. I think we are now back on for the Prime Minister not being there by the end of the
But I don't think
year.
it's a flip flop. I think the thing is,
Events
my
change
my
things, don't they?
consistent view has been, I think even if things are really bad, the economy is bad. The economy is bad. I think if we probably were going to do a bit on energy today, but obviously the last night's events overtook things. I think, and we might get to it next week. I think it looks more and more likely they'll have to do some kind of energy bailout come the winter, which is when they're putting it off to. So I think I can't remember the winter price review is September maybe. So I think there'll be a lot of pressure September, October for assistance.
Yeah.
For winter fuel for a range of groups, which will cost them loads of money and they run up to the budget. And I think they'll have a fight with the backbenchers because they'll announce something and then the backbenchers will want to add to it, whatever it is, and we'll have weeks of that.
Let's be frank. The Labour backbenchers are going to want universal, as
Well,
the Conservatives did when they
they're
were in government.
also
That's what they're going to want.
they're essentially running the government, so it depends how hard. And by then, also, again, we didn't get into this week. We'll do it in the next couple of weeks. It is expected, although his power is draining away by the day, that the Prime Minister will have some kind of reshuffle post-May. And the most common prediction for the headline of that reshuffle would be the return of Angela Rayner, who would, by her nature, be the voice more than anyone they currently have of those backbenchers in cabinet. And therefore, I think make those U-turns even more likely because she would have the power and the desire to do so. But, I think it has always been the case that since we entered this Mandelson saga, I think it has the potential. We just don't know what's in a load of these documents. So
Yeah.
if he survives the next few days, which I think he probably will, because I think at the
Yeah,
very
agreed.
least, the mentality of MPs will be like, let's at least get to the locals.
Yeah, no, exactly. We've got 3 weeks.
No
There's
one's
no
going to
point
push
to.
before that, and
Yeah.
I think MPs will want to wait to the locals.
Also, James, you said it before. They'll want to hang the set of results round his neck.
But of course, look, it's very hard to predict what happens. But a scenario is early next week, a very senior civil servant, either Ollie or someone else, comes out and says the story you've been told is not true. This is what happened. At that point, he could be gone within 24 hours. So, because I do think there are those points when I think one cabinet minister going probably doesn't take him down. But I think at times like this, if a couple of cabinet ministers went and said, we just don't believe the Prime Minister anymore, we think he's a liar, this is not about our self-interest or election prospects, I just can't work for him, he's a liar, then I think he's gone, he's toast.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't think they will do that. But what I do think is, as this showed, we kind of probably thought we had most of the stuff from the Mandelson time. We probably,
Yes.
I think the general Westminster consensus, and whether it's opposition parties or the lobby, was that we will get more stuff and it'll be embarrassing. It'll probably be comments about Trump that aren't very helpful, which actually now I don't think the number 10 would care about that much. They want to have a punch at Trump, but there would be nothing catastrophic. I think with the fact we have had something that's pretty close to catastrophic means you can't rule out more.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
stuff we don't know. The Prime Minister was told at this point, or whatever. At that point, he will be gone, I think. And
You're gonna have a lot of You're gonna have a lot of confidence in David Lammy, James, haven't you? A
yeah.
lot of confidence. David Lammy never got told anything.
And the other
Bite
thing
me.
is, going back to the point is, if how bad could these elections be for Labour? This has come at a really bad time. The worse they are, the more chance that they'll go for him. I mean, I think that is. I don't think it's a case of, if they do this badly in Scotland, then they'll definitely go for him. But the likelihood of him going surely increases with the worst performance. And back to where we started, this is not what you want when you're running a local election campaign, because this is now. I would be shocked if this wasn't still touching the front pages on Tuesday, because we'll have a statement on Tuesday, so it'll be front page. So at minimum, we have 4 days of rolling national news about the Prime Minister potentially being a liar, having misled the House of Commons. What counts as a lie? If he misled them, but he didn't know he's definitely misled the Commons. That's gone.
Yeah, it's now about whether it's
If
inadvertent or deliberate.
whether
Yeah,
it was intentional. And so we've got 4 days of debate of that, and that's assuming it stops on the Tuesday. It may not, and that is, to your point, that is all over the postal vote periods, and that is overshadowing the run up to the locals
final
and
two
the
weeks, the
polls.
final 2 weeks of the
So
campaign.
anything could happen. Well,
I think it's quite. I think it is like it. I just. It feels like reliving my time in Parliament from the outside. It feels like watching privilege. I mean, we've got Ed Davey calling for a privileges committee hearing.
yeah,
Yeah, we've got it all. The parallels are just incredible, and I can't believe in less than 2 years we're here.
it's crazy.
I can't be the quiet, James. The quiet.
Yeah, the grown-ups. It's so good to have the grown-ups in charge.
Because, by the way, ladies and gents, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And I just decided to laugh
That's
because I
very
don't know what
true.
else to do. We can't do anything else apart from. I mean, you look these locals, James. You've got Redbridge where Streeting represents. Let's see what his results look like. You've got Shabana Mahmood in Birmingham. What happens with her wards in her constituency? We've got Bridget Phillipson potentially seeing zero Labour councillors in the entirety of Sunderland for the first time since the creation
Which they've
of that
ran
council
since it was created.
since it
I
was
think in
created
the
in 19.
50s, is it?
In 1974,
74.
1974 it was created. So first time Labour haven't run. We're not actually worse. Labour have always run it. So Labour might not just lose control. Labour might go from literally always running it to not having a single Labour
Yeah.
council on it. That's how bad it is. You've got Rachel Reeves in Leeds in her constituency. Potentially the Greens looking like they can make huge gains in that neck of the woods. I mean, they're going to be, like you say, it's not just about benches. There'll be cabinet ministers watching results, and their members are going to be saying, and I know it's going to happen. How can you keep propping this guy up?
Yeah.
Because this guy's just cost me my job. For some of these councillors, this is their income. This is their livelihood. This is their how they make their money. They're about to potentially lose their livelihoods in the next two to three
And it's
weeks.
their way of life. It's their friends. It's their community. It's their identity to a degree.
Yeah,
It's a kind of existential thing, I think.
yeah,
People beyond money, you know, whatever, most people in politics do really care about their community and their country, whatever party they are.
yeah, exactly. Agree.
I think is the case, and maybe not everyone, but I think the majority. And for those people to, in their eyes, watch a party they think is going to be bad for their community because of this leader, not because of what they've done.
Yeah,
And many of these people think the government have done a lot of decent stuff, and they just haven't talked about it enough. You know, I think it's
Bob's problem.
yeah, huh? Yeah. Well, I think that many people think that the workers' rights and these are things that they came into politics to do,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
you can't. And the Tories had this where, at times, it was a case of, I think there were questions over delivery, but at times it was a case of, well, we can't talk about anything because we're just constantly talking about Partygate or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
And so, yes, we're not happy with everything, and we want to do more on immigration or whatever it was at the time. But even the good things we can't talk about. And I think if I speak to Labour people, a lot of them say to me, "Oh, we have actually done a lot of good stuff. We just haven't talked about it / can't talk about it because we're talking about Peter Mandelson and what the goings on in Number 10, which is
yeah.
totally all the things that they said they would sort out, right?"
Exactly. Well, ladies and gents, a week is a long time in politics. 24 hours could be a long time in politics. Who knows where we'll be when the pod returns, but we'll certainly wait to see the Prime Minister's statement on Monday and what the fallout is on Tuesday. Then we'll be back. Parliament is going to be prorogued next week because there is going to be a King's speech on the 13th of May. I would suggest some people might say that's a good thing for Keir Starmer Parliament being prorogued. I think it's, by the way, a more dangerous thing that MPs are going to be solely in their patches, away from the whips, away from Westminster,
Chatting to each other.
knocking on doors and chatting to each other.
Hmm.
That can only lead to more pain for Keir Starmer. But hey ho, we go into that period and let's see what unfolds. So thank you so much for once again tuning in. I've been Jonathan Gullis.
And I've been James, and I'm off to double check on Jonathan's security clearance, ready for the next episode.
All the best.
Bye.